So The Outer Worlds was not really a game I had massively paid attention to, other than, the fact that it was an exclusive on the Epic Games Store, that this had caused a lot of controversy. But I decided to check it out at E3 this year. And I've got to say, based on everything I've seen, I am really interested in this game, which looks absolutely incredible. If you don't know, it is the brand new RPG by Obsidian Games. These are the developers behind the Fallout New Vegas series, and it is kind of considered to be the spiritual successor to that game. Many people are calling it Fallout in space. Think space western. And definitely from watching some of the gameplay and the developers talking about the game, it does seem to have the same style of game, the same tone, the same feel to it, and the same dark sense of humor. So if you were incredibly disappointed in Fallout 76, which I'm sure many people were, especially given Bethesda's recent announcement of them introducing Battle Royale and that kind of thing, then The Outer Worlds is probably a game that is right up your street. Similarly, if you were disappointed in Mass Effect Andromeda, then this might be a game that you might want to pick up and check out. So this video, I'm going to talk about what The Outer Worlds is and why it's very similar to Fallout and also to Mass Effect Andromeda, and why it's something really that if you're an RPG fan, that you should definitely be taking an interest in. So let's start off by talking about the premise. So it is effectively, it's corporations in space. At the beginning of the game, you are on a colony ship that loses its way. It gets lost on the way to a colony in the Halcyon system, and you effectively show up 70 years late, and you get unfrozen by a scientist who recruits you to help the colony, which has fallen on hard times, as well as to rescue and awaken the other colonists on board the ship. And there are apparently hundreds of thousands of colonists that you have to try to help rescue. He also wants you to take on the corporate board as well. You effectively play as a space smuggler. You have your own ship and you can travel to different worlds. They have confirmed 2 full worlds, including Monarch and Terra 2, which is the corporate board homeworld, as well as asteroids and space stations that you'll be able to navigate as well. All the worlds that you can explore are terraformed, so it's not going to be like No Man's Sky, where you have different levels of gravity. Some worlds that have no oxygen are not very friendly, have a lot of hazards. It's not going to be like that. It is more sort of Earth-like in some ways, but a little bit more alien to a degree. So we actually got to see a lot of Monarch at E3 this year. Now, Monarch was supposed to be the home world, the capital of the colony. It was the first world that they terraformed, and the process was supposed to destroy the native plants and inhabitants and effectively make way for Earth species. Suffice it to say, something went very wrong with the terraforming process, and the plants and inhabitants, rather than dying out, actually became bigger, more aggressive, and more dangerous. Monarch was then subsequently abandoned after the terraforming failed, leaving behind the colonists that were living on the world at the time to survive for themselves. It then effectively became a lawless frontier controlled by renegade corporations and organized crime. And this is the world that was kind of showcased at E3. So it talked about like some of the different corporate groups that were part of that. There was one corporation called Sublight Shipping Salvage Corporation, controlled by Catherine Malin. The renegade corporations basically declared it as an independent colony, and the corporate board obviously were very unhappy by this. They basically put a blockade around it to stop the resources and supplies being delivered. So the world is effectively kind of starving and is relying on these renegade corporations, including the Sublight Shipping Salvaging Company, to survive. And Catherine Malin is kind of really the big honcho of this planet. So during the actual E3 demonstration, you do a side mission for Catherine where she sets you up against someone called Clive Lumberg in a side quest, and in it you have to go and basically take him out. So you can decide whether to kill him or whether to side with him and take on Catherine. But they showed a little bit of the world, they showed a bit of the gunplay, they talked a little bit about some of the game mechanics, and a lot of it has me incredibly incredibly excited. So how is it like Fallout? Well, there's a number of different ways in which it is very much like Fallout. The first way is obviously character customization. Character customization is a large part of the Outer Worlds. You can actually choose your own character. I assume you can play as either male or female, and you can choose the way that you play. So whether you are a hero, a villain, you can play as a lunatic. Hell, you can even play as an idiot. If you spec your character in the right way, it does actually open up like dumb dialogue, which you can choose and you can play in that way. That just sounds like absolutely incredible. But you can spec your character in many different ways, so you can sort of choose to level them up. You can focus on those dialogue options and level up your dialogue abilities. This will give you abilities like charm or intimidate, or the ability to lie in conversations, which opens up more dialogue options for you. In this way, it is very much like the original Mass Effect, where you could do that, and it would give you more options to get through sort of situations, maybe in a non-violent way, by sort of charming or intimidating your way out of situations. So it does open up many dialogue options. You can then choose to spec your character, focusing on engineer abilities, which gives you the ability to hack computer terminals, or lockpicking, which might give you access to certain routes or certain access points. So it just gives you many mission options. In this mission that they showed at E3, they did actually show that there were many different ways that you could actually go through that mission. If you have the lockpick ability, there was actually a sewer system that you could access to stealth your way into the actual mission, into the factory, to obviously take down Clive. They also showed about engineering. There's one bit where you hacked the robots in the factory and turned them against the human characters, and there was just lots of different things like that. So it does obviously open up the what you can do depending on how you actually spec your character, which will be quite interesting to actually play through. They also introduced a new system which is called the Flaw System, which sounds really interesting. So as you play through the game, there are flaws that you can develop. So if you do get sort of killed or hurt a lot by robot enemies, robot NPCs, then you actually develop a flaw, a phobia called Robo Phobia. And what this basically does, it debuffs your character. So you obtain this fear of robots. So whenever you fight robots in the game, you actually have certain debuffs. So it'll reduce your dexterity or your strength or your accuracy or that kind of thing. There are other fears as well. So, if you're constantly set on fire, you'll develop a fear of fire. If you're constantly creeping through sort of dark sewers, you'll develop a fear of the dark, that kind of thing. Now, why would you even choose to pick this? It is completely optional. So you can choose whether to accept the flaw or reject it. Why would you accept this flaw? Well, if you do accept the flaw, you actually get to choose a perk, which you can use to sort of over level your character and give you extra strength or extra abilities. So it sounds really interesting, and it is going to make your character very unique to your experiences. Next, let's talk about the companions. So we got to see two companions at E3. We got to see Ellie, who effectively was a doctor, kind of a doctor, but is sort of more of a kind of a pirate sort of freelancer in this game. And we also got to see Nyoka, who is actually a big game hunter. Now, your companions, you can either choose to go out into missions by yourself, or you can take them with you. They actually help you in combat. They have their own abilities, their own weapons. You can actually choose to level them up and to progress them. So you can develop something called the leadership ability, where actually that NPC character, that companion, will take a leadership role in combat. We got to see Nyoka using a really cool looking sort of heavy machine gun, and it just looked really, really, really cool. They all will also contribute to the story as well. So when you're in the middle of conversations with NPCs, they will actually interject during those conversations and give their own opinions and thoughts thoughts on things. You can also get into arguments with your companions as well. So depending upon player choices and actions, this will actually impact upon your relationship with your companions. So for example, if you started siding with the corporate board, but one of your companions is heavily against the corporate board, then that actually might result in that companion sort of arguing against you and maybe even leaving your side. So that's quite interesting. They do also have their own skills as well, so you can choose to take certain companions into the world with you depending on the mission structure and what you're trying to do. So certain companions will have lock picking abilities, certain companions will bring extra dialogue skills with you as well, depending on what your play style is. And I think that sounds really, really interesting. There will be permadeath apparently for some of your companions, and you can actually harm your companions as well. But what makes me a little bit sad is they have confirmed that they're not romanceable, so there will be no romance options when it comes to your companions. But it's kind of exciting, you know, the whole idea of having these really well fleshed out companions that you can take with you. That definitely is one of the elements I really liked in Fallout, and obviously it's one of the things I like the most in the Mass Effect series. So the companions look really, really interesting. Let's talk about the combat, because one of the biggest criticisms often laid against Fallout is just how kind of weak the gameplay and the combat tends to be. Well, I've got to say that the combat in the Outer Worlds actually looks really good. Obviously, you have a variety of weapons from shotguns, sniper rifles, shrink rays, shrink guns. You have melee weapons as well. Pretty wicked looking sort of blade, even like a scythe kind of attack that you can do as well. But the weapons look really good. Apparently, they have different ammo types on alternate fire modes, which I'll talk about. Which is mostly to do with the weapon modding that you can actually do in the game as well. So you can actually mod different weapons to increase their stats. So whether it's their damage, their range, their fire rate. You can also mod weapons to have particular ammo types. So for example, you could craft a shock machine gun, which is very useful against sort of robot enemies and mechanical enemies. There is also armor modding as well, which sounds incredibly cool. So apparently you can create an electric field around your armor, and this will actually stun enemies that try to melee you. So this is very useful if you are a sniper and you're always down sight and you're trying to deal with those melee enemies that are constantly running at you and attacking you. There is also certain mods that you can induce to help with like stealth. So there is a armor mod which reduces the sound radius of footsteps, which will help you sort of sneak your way through areas. The most interesting part of the combat for me though is the tactical targeting time dilation, which is very similar to VATS in Fallout. Basically, one of the side effects of having been frozen for 70 years is something called hibernation sickness. Now, what this basically allows you to do is it allows you to slow down time, which allows you to target your enemies. You can move more quickly, obviously, whilst your enemies move slower. You can use this, tactically speaking, so you can use it to look for weaknesses in your enemies by analyzing them, looking at what faction they're part of, their health, their level, their armor, their behavior. But you can also use it to do, once you level it up, you can also use it to do what we call location-based hits and effects. So if you aim on the body of the enemy, depending on where you're aiming, it will show what kind of damage you're going to do. So if you aim on the arm, you will maim that enemy. Now that will prevent them using their weapons. If you aim on their leg, obviously you will cripple them, which will be very useful against melee-based enemies. And if you aim at their head, this will actually blind them. So you can use this to get an advantage in combat, to scope out, to look for weaknesses, and to target certain areas. So in that way, it is very much like VATS. It looks really good. I really like the time dilation. It looks really, really interesting. Finally, let's talk about the biggest thing with any Obsidian game, which is this whole idea of choice and consequence and the game shaping decisions that you can make. So the decisions that you make will shape the world around you, and they will also shape the story and the way that that progresses. So you can choose to side with particular factions. You can choose to kill certain characters to let other characters live. You obviously make dialogue choices as well, and you have to live with the consequences of your decisions. There will be a variety of small choices as well as large choices. So, for example, in the mission that they showed between Catherine Malin and Clive Lumberg, you could actually choose whether or not you would kill Clive or whether or not you would let him live and kill Catherine. And obviously the choices that you make have an impact. So Catherine, the Sublight Shipping Corporation, brings a lot of food and resources into the colony. So if you choose to kill Catherine, then that would effectively starve the colony and would have quite serious repercussions for Monarch. So there's going to be lots of choices that you can make, and you're actually going to get to see the consequences of that as you play through the story. Depending on what choices and decisions you make as well, that will also impact upon what kind of quest lines become available for you later on in the game. So I think that's really interesting. But I've got to say that the Outer Worlds looks incredible. It looks really, really good. It looks like a mixture between, you know, Mass Effect meets Fallout. That's effectively what this game is. And it's interesting. I'm not usually a first-person RPG kind of gamer. I tend to prefer third-person RPGs. But I will say that the world looks really interesting. Combat looks great. The characters look really cool. I like the dark humor, the dark writing. I love the setting. I love the idea of it. And yeah, it's just got me really, really interested. So The Outer Worlds is actually coming out on the 25th of October. It will be available on the PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and on PC. Although for PC, it is an Epic Games exclusive. So I know for many PC gamers, they're obviously not happy about that. But yeah, Outer Worlds looks really, really good. Is this a game that you are interested in? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, what you think of the game, and yeah, just get a conversation going and share your thoughts. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope you found it useful or interesting. I hope you guys are having a great week. Obviously, I'll be back again with more videos later in the week. Got a couple more E3 videos that I'm planning to do. But yeah, hope you guys are having a great week. Take care, and as always, happy gaming. Bye, guys.